Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for tonight's Connected Conversation, a program conducted by the Idaho Humanities Council. I am Jennifer Hawley, Director of Programs and Development. If you are not familiar with our organization, I encourage you to check out our website at idahohumanities.org. If you have any questions tonight, please use the Q&A feature located at the bottom of your screen. With me tonight is Carol Skinner, owner of the Flicks movie theater that has been in downtown Boise for 36 years. It is an honor to have you with us tonight, and I turn it over to you, Carol. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. I was pleasantly surprised when you invited me, and I saw all the people with PhDs ahead of me, and I was thinking, well, this will be fun. So thanks a lot for having me. And I know you wanted me to talk about independent films and not just do an infomercial on the Flicks movie theater. So I promise that's what I'm going to do. And apparently some people don't know what independent film is, and I just wanted to talk about that a little bit. So independent filmmakers have an idea, maybe a story they want to tell, or an event that they've witnessed or that they've heard about that they want to make a movie about. And so rather than going through the studio system, they write the story, they cast the film, they do the sets, the locations, they shoot the film, they edit the film. And when it's all done, it's usually pretty much what they wanted it to be. If you use the studio system, you can get a more polished look to a film a lot of times, but you lose that individual vision unless you're someone like, say Steven Spielberg or Alfred Hitchcock, who has complete control. But a lot of times when you go through the studios, then the people in the suits get to say, I think you should, like, for example, our own Mike Hoffman from Idaho, when he did his first studio-backed film, they wanted him, it was called Some Girls, which wasn't the title that he gave it. And he wasn't, first of all, he wasn't happy that they wanted him to change the title, but then they wanted him to put a cute dog in it. And, right there, your control is gone. So that's kind of what I'm talking about with independent films. They, a lot of independent filmmakers are self-taught. Some of them do go to film school. Some of them are lucky enough to have done a short film, which is a lot of how a lot of filmmakers get started with filmmaking. They do a short film and then they get a chance to show it to people at a Sundance lab who help them workshop it into a complete film. Sling Blade is an example of that. That was an award-winning short, and they helped him turn that into a movie. I know that's way before many people's time, but we played it, and I still remember it because it was a really big impact film. One thing about independent films is that you don't really have the budget that you have with the studio, so the film might not be as polished. I remember going to the Telluride Film Festival in 1988, and Terrence Davies was premiering his first feature, Distant Voices, Still Alive. And he was there at the festival, which is one of the great things about film festivals, is that you get to hear the directors and sometimes the actors talk about their work. And there had been a scene in the movie where one of the characters falls through a glass ceiling. It's a very dramatic scene. And afterwards, during the Q&A, he explained that it's a good thing that scene worked because he only had money to do it once. So that's one thing that's different about independent films, is that you just have to work within your budget. You might not have, car chases, and you might not get them to clear the streets of New York City for you to make your movie, but at least it's yours. And many independent filmmakers later do go on to do studio films. I'm thinking of like George Lucas, who long ago did a movie called THX 1138, or Martin Scorsese, who did Mean Streets. Christopher Nolan, who's a very popular filmmaker right now, he just made Tenet, the film that was supposed to, revive and bring back the movie industry during this pandemic. He made a really great movie with Guy Pearce called Memento. And, a lot of independent filmmakers are documentary filmmakers, and they go into war zones and they go into, war-torn countries, or they explore other stories that they find interesting. The filmmaker Errol Morris did a movie called The Thin Blue Line a number of years ago. A man who'd been passing through Texas was arrested for murder. He spent 7 years after he was convicted on death row, and it just didn't add up. And Errol Morris started researching that event, and he was actually able to get him released from prison and exonerated. And the movie takes you all the way through all the steps and how he did that, and it's quite amazing what an impact a special film like that can make to really save someone's life. I wanted to look at my notes because I know I forgot something, and I'm sure there'll be lots of questions, but I wanted to tell a little bit more about that. Oh, I know. So one thing that I especially like about independent films is that they focus on character and story. I feel like there's a trend lately, well, not too lately because not much is happening in the film world, but in the last few years, a lot of studio movies are sequels, and they have Roman numerals. A lot of times I say one thing we don't do at the Flicks is that we don't show any movies that have a Roman numeral after them. But a lot of studio films now not only are sequels or superhero movies, but they're, car crashes and explosions. And I feel like when you go to those movies, you're just bombarded with visual and auditory stimuli. But at the end, do you really remember the story or any of the characters' names? I feel like it's just noise in a lot of ways. And although in the past, I think so many wonderful studio films have been made also, and I don't want to make it sound like only independent filmmakers make good films, but I just think it's a trend now to not focus on character and story. And, the same thing I love about books is what I love about movies, which is character and story. I thought it'd be fun to tell you a couple of stories about movies I've seen. I've been an avid moviegoer my whole life. The first movie I remember seeing, my family and I were on a ship going from New York to Germany. My dad was in the Army, and they showed a movie called Hi Lily, Hi Lily, Hi Lo. And that's the song. The movie starred Leslie Caron, and I was allowed to stay up and watch it. I remember I had a pink flannel nightgown on. I was 4, I think I said that. And it was just like, wonderland to me to see a movie. And of course, we didn't have television then, so it was, just an amazing thing to see a story and people up on a big screen. The next movie I want to tell you about is when I was 10, I got to see Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo. On Movie Post, they have a movie theater. They also have bowling alleys and roller rinks usually. So we got to do all of those things on the weekends. And I went to see Vertigo with my friend. And when I got home, I told my mom, I said, you and Daddy really have to go see this movie, Vertigo. It's really amazing. And she said, well, we're going to go see, I think it was called The Tea House of the August Moon with Red Buttons. And I said, no, you really have to go to Vertigo, because there were 2 screens. You really have to go to Vertigo. And they went to the other movie. And 25 years later, I was an adult, and I had a movie theater. And I called my parents up and I said, I just want you to know, they've just done a re-release of Alfred Hitchcock, one of his many masterpieces, Vertigo. And I also want you to know that they're not re-releasing Red Buttons in Tea House of the August Moon. So it's fun to be right when you're 10, The summer after my senior year of high school, a boyfriend took me to a movie called Blow Up, a Michelangelo Antonioni film starring Vanessa Redgrave. Fascinating film. I haven't watched it again. I sometimes don't like to go back and see movies that have a big impact because I'm afraid that it won't be the same. That happened to me with Breakfast at Tiffany's. So I don't go back to these bigger movies that were important to me. But the movie Blow Up was just, it had amazing story and amazing acting. And it had a great scene with the band, the Yardbirds, in this nightclub. And I think it was Jimmy Page, correct me if I'm wrong, in the Yardbirds, if you're old enough, uh, that destroyed his guitar on stage, banging it and crashing it, and the strings were flying. And I, years later, going to rock festivals, other rock and roll artists did that, but I think he was really the first. So at the end of the movie, my boyfriend, as we got in the car, said, "I just didn't get that." And I have to admit, we broke up that night. I just kind of figured that that was the tip of the iceberg of what he wasn't going to get. So that was the end of that relationship. um, um, Later that summer, I went with a boyfriend to my first foreign film, A Man and a Woman with Anouk Aimée, and it was in French. Had wonderful music. I could hum it for you, but I don't think you want me to. Singing is not one of my talents. Years and years later, I got to meet Anouk Aimée and at the Telluride Film Festival, which was pretty exciting for me. Um, but it was just also a revelation, like a foreign movie with subtitles. And ever since then, when people have said to me, um, I don't really watch movies with subtitles. I just think, within 5 minutes you're totally into the story, and you know, it it's not hard. I mean, you did learn to read when you were 6. So um, a lot of times when I've enjoyed a movie and someone asks me if it was subtitled, I don't even remember if it was subtitled or not. And The Man and Woman just was just a beautiful romantic film about love and loss. And it was a real eye opener for me that you could go to a movie in a different language. And my experience with that from then on is that it's so important to see foreign films because it isn't just like an American movie in a foreign language. Those people have a completely different worldview than I do, and then that most of you probably do, unless you've traveled extensively around the world and really gotten to know people from foreign countries. It's just a different way of looking at the world. And I think it's really important for us as Americans to understand other people. I mean, right now it seems like we don't even understand each other. But I think it is important to let that kind of information in and let it like settle within us. In 1981, a wonderful film called My Dinner with Andre came out with Andre Gregory and Wallace Shawn. It's the two actors, Louis Malle, a Frenchman who was married to Candice Bergen, you might remember, wonderful director of so many great films, but he directed that. It's an American movie, and Wally Shawn and Andre Gregory each wrote their own part. They were friends. Andre Gregory had spent a bunch of time at a place called Findhorn, which you may have heard of, and he was talking about all these just amazing concepts that Wally Shawn, the more down-to-earth character, was not familiar with. And we spend the whole evening, or the duration of the movie, with them having dinner at a nice New York restaurant, talking about all these different concepts and their lives. And at the end, Wally Shawn is leaving and he says, when I was 10, I took a limousine around the city and all I thought about was art and music. And now I'm 36 and all I think about is money. And it just brought me to tears. I just thought, that's a fate that can befall all children. And it's so sad. But also, it was a wonderful movie and so engrossing. I'm going to tell you a few more stories. So Blue Velvet, David Lynch, a very, very quirky independent filmmaker, made this movie with Dennis Hopper and Isabella Rossellini called Blue Velvet. They play that song, I think it was Frankie Valli from the 50s. That song is ruined forever for me, let me just say. But I went with Rick, my husband, to New York he had some meetings, and I entertained myself by going to museums and to some movies. And I went to see Blue Velvet, and there's a scene where Kyle MacLachlan is hiding in the closet. Dennis Hopper is doing creepy things to Isabella Rossellini right in front of the closet with this kind of a, he's breathing some kind of, I don't know if it's helium or what, but it's super creepy. And I found that my face was getting numb, my hands were getting numb, my feet were numb, and I'm like, oh, I'm hyperventilating. Like or I don't know, I've got to breathe. I got to breathe. I was so scared for this Colin McLaughlin character that I just forgot to breathe. And that was in November. 2 months later, we went to the Sundance Film Festival, and all the movies had started. I was hurrying to my movie. It was icy, and so I was wearing boots with high heels. Don't ask me. And I'm the only one on the street. And then walking up the street toward me is Dennis Hopper. And I mean, I was like, should I go into a store? Should I cross the street? Should I, it's slippery. And I'm like, and then he got pretty close to me, like a few feet away. And he goes, hi. And I went, ah, like that. I was terrified of Dennis Hopper, I think with good reason. Anyway, so that's my Blue Velvet story. Some of the most wonderful things that have happened to me watching movies have to do with going to film festivals. And a different year, and I went to Telluride a lot of years, let me just say, I love it so much. Simon Callow, who's an actor, he's a character actor. He was actually in A Room with a View. You get to see his chubby little body naked jumping into a pond. But he turns out to be an expert on Charles Laughton. And he showed clips from a lot of different movies that Charles Laughton had been in. And one of them was, of course, The Hunchback of Notre Dame from 1939. And there's a scene where Laughton is grasping, I think it's Big Bertha, I forget the name of the bell, but he's grasping this bell in Notre Dame Cathedral in the bell tower, and he's riding it, and it's ringing, and the anguish in his face, it's unforgettable. What a fine actor he was. And, I had seen that movie before, but when he showed us that clip, and afterwards he talked about the movies and Charles Laughton's acting method, and he said, you all felt the chills watching that scene of Charles Laughton on the big bell. And he said what he used was the day that they were shooting that was the day that the Nazis invaded Poland. And it was just, it makes you understand what the depth of feeling that must have caused in making that film. I wanted to talk a little bit about the beginning of the sort of independent film craze that's been ongoing since about 1979. John Sayles is an independent filmmaker that's never made a studio film. And the film that I saw then was The Return of the Secaucus Seven. And that really was the beginning of independent filmmakers thinking, they could make their own film about their own story. He used his friends as actors. They all gather. And later, The Big Chill was made. It's kind of a copycat of Return of Secaucus Seven, more polished and also a good and enjoyable film. But that really was the beginning. And John Sayles is someone that's gone on to make only independent films. I believe he won an Oscar for maybe Matewan. He's made a number of films. I got to meet him at a film festival one time, and he talked about his method. And I even saw him, like, he would save up money by doing other jobs until he had enough money to make his next film. He's also uncredited on many, many Hollywood films. He was known as one of the best, I should say, he's probably still is known as one of the best script doctors. So he would fix the script that needed help that the studios were producing. I even saw him on the local PBS station one time on not Dr. Science, but a kids show. I was watching it with my daughter. She was about 9, and he was playing a baseball player who's explaining like batting averages. So he took any jobs he could and to make his films, which shows a lot of dedication. And a lot of independent filmmakers are like that. John Cassavetes was a very well-known independent filmmaker, but he also was a good actor. He played the husband to Mia Farrow in Rosemary's Baby, but he also made mostly films with his wife, Gena Rowlands. A Woman Under the Influence is a notable one. Dennis Hopper, creepy Dennis Hopper, acted in his first film, Rebel Without a Cause, but also he directed the movie Easy Rider, which, with Peter Fonda, which is a pretty fine little film. I have to say, just so emblematic of that time, which is sort of, the time of my youth. Um, Errol Morris, I talked about a little bit already with The Thin Blue Line, and he only makes documentaries, and he always wins prizes. Robert Altman is someone whose films I really love, and he started making shorts in like 1951. He did TV series, and then he did MASH, which was a big hit for him. Nashville is my favorite Robert Altman movie. It has even Ronnie Blakely, who's from Nampa, um, as one of the main characters, Lily Tomlin, Keith Carradine. I really love that movie. Woody Allen is an independent filmmaker, and he started out with really kind of goofy things like Sleeper, which is hilarious. And I know he has studio backing, as did later, of course, Robert Altman and Alfred Hitchcock. Um, but those are filmmakers that always had complete control because they'd already made a name for themselves with independent films. There are a lot of other quirky independent filmmakers. I made a long list. I don't think I'm going to need to bore you with all of those, but if people want to see any of my lists or my top 50 movies or any of that, I'm happy to share that with you later. I want to mention another independent film that just blew me away called The Station Agent. Tom McCarthy is an independent filmmaker, and that was his first feature. And it had Peter Dinklage, who we all know now from Game of Thrones, wonderful actor. He was also in Bruges, which I thought was a great independent film. But Tom McCarthy also made The Visitor. I just was amazed that someone for their first feature would make a film so polished and such a great story. And it's really fun just to see that individual vision that independent filmmakers bring to their work. I think there's really no substitute for it. And I'm wondering if maybe we want to maybe include the audience. I know there are people out there. I don't see you yet, but I'm hoping to see. I invited a bunch of friends, so hoping to see some of them out there. If you want to open it up a little bit, Jennifer, I'd be happy to do that.
Sure, Carol. I do have some questions, and I really love your description of independent films as opening up the world view, a different world view. I think that is so important that we all need to see. We just see such, regular movies from Hollywood, and I love that you offer such different perspectives at your movie theater. I love that, and I really appreciate it. So
Thank
thank
you.
you
Thanks
for
so
that.
much.
So I do have some questions here. One here is, when were you most surprised by audience reactions to a film, either positively or negatively? Which film? What reaction? Why do you think the audience responded in that way?
So two things come to mind. One of the movies is with Bruno Ganz. It's called Mephisto, a really wonderful German film. And I stayed late at work. Back when I used to work 60 hours a week, I would sometimes stay and see the 9 o'clock movie or the 9:30 movie. And usually it's a smaller audience. So there probably were a dozen of us in that movie. Such a fine film. And afterwards, people just sat there. And then as people started to get up, we all just stopped in the lobby and just talked about the film. And then we finally just sat down and talked the film. Like, there was so much there, so much depth. And it was really fun to have. I mean, I didn't know those people. I mean, they were my customers and I maybe recognized some of them, but it was really, really fun to just have that sort of intimate, raw, discussion after the film and how we felt about it. Um, Another movie that comes to mind was called Once Were Warriors. It's a New Zealand film, and it's about Maori people living in the inner city, um, difficult life, persecuted. And, a lot of the men had the tattoos on one side of their face and are kind of scary looking. It's part of their tradition. Um, my friend Carolyn Cannon watched it on like a Friday night, and she came out and she was crying. She just said, I said, you have to see the end. Like, there's always a resolution. Like, you should go back. And she goes, I can't see another minute of that movie. And she was crying. She said, I dare you. I dare you to watch that movie. And so I stayed. I hadn't seen it yet, and I stayed. It's a really good movie, but it's so difficult. I mean, there's abused by an uncle of one of the young girls. I mean, it's all the characters are Maori characters, and they live in this, in the city and poverty. There's sexual abuse against this young girl. I'm thinking, well, that's what she was probably crying about. That's probably the worst it's going to get. And then I'm not going to tell you the whole movie, but then something worse happens. You're like, oh my God, like, well, it can't get harder to watch than this. And then more things happen. You're just like, I mean, just painful, but a good movie, like a well done movie. Um, and afterwards, people had left. Other people that stayed through the end just sat there. And then as we went out, I said, I'm never going to a difficult movie at the last show at night. Like, I don't want to just go home. All of us are going to go home and lay there and look at our ceiling and not be able to sleep. And so we stayed and talked about that and kind of processed it. And I mean, I thought it was important for us to see how those people live, but it was just, you know, indescribably difficult. And the same thing with the movie we played not too long ago. And I'm kind of struggling to think of the name of it, but it was about a Native American school in Canada. And, you know, just this main actor, he was so great. I hope he gets to be in another movie because he was so good. But he, these kids are were ripped from their homes, put in this school, beaten and sexually abused, and just all kinds of things. This one guy finds a way out by being a star hockey player. Like, he's a fabulous hockey player, and he has a chance to be, in the big leagues and make a name for himself. And hockey is really big in Canada. And instead, his past catches up with him, and the priest that abused him appears to root him out at one of the games, and he just quits hockey. And and the same thing where people just had to huddle together afterwards and process. Oh, and which reminds me, Agira, the Wrath of God. I don't remember the audience reaction to that because I saw that a long time ago when I lived in Seattle, but that's a movie like Apocalypse Now that's based on Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. And both really fine movies. But the Agira movie, I felt at the end like someone had, tied me up and beat me. It was just like these people going down the river, and just, it's just not going to get any better. But I have to say, I'm almost never surprised by an audience reaction by a film if I've seen it with them, because you're there as a community. You see and feel the same things. I mean, some of us are, I have a harder time with things where children are being hurt. I have children, and, some people have a harder time with different things. But I'm not usually too surprised by the reaction. I'm there too.
I appreciate the films that you bring in. I think it's really good that you challenge your audience with what they're seeing and like what you're explaining. I know it is difficult. There are difficult subjects, but it is good to be challenged by that. I mean, it is real life that is happening out there, and we need to see it um, by film and other things. And I'm glad that you do offer that resource.
Well, don't forget, we also play La La Land and stuff like that.
Oh, right.
So.
Yeah.
And we just had Emma. We had Emma in March, and it was like wonderful and delightful. And we used to play all those Merchant Ivory movies, which are wonderful and delightful too. So don't think that you're going to feel like you've been whipped every time you come. Honest.
Oh.
And one good thing is, on the website you can always look at the trailer, and if it's not your cup of tea or not your day to feel like you need a good cry, there are other choices always.
I always go to see the Oscar nominated animated shorts.
Oh yeah, those are so fun.
I love those. Those are so fun.
We just had the Manhattan Short Film Festival, and we usually have a full, the 200-seat theater is almost full for those. And we had 45 people at one show, which is the most we've had since March 19th, because people love those shorts, and they often go on to win the Oscars. So it's really fun. Yeah. It's really fun for people.
Let's see, we've got a question here. Where did you grow up? I think you explained that a little bit in your bio, but you could talk a little bit about that.
So I was born at Madigan Hospital at Fort Lewis. We moved after that to Pasco, and then we moved to Fort Ord in California, and then we went to Germany, and then we lived in New Jersey, um, Raritan Arsenal in near Metuchen, New Jersey, and then we went to Fort Hood, Texas, um, and then we went back to Germany. And then when I was in the 8th grade, my dad retired from the Army. So, but those are the formative years. So that's, the rest of my childhood, I had a little brother, a surprise little brother when I was 12. And so I think after that, I was pretty much treated like a grown up because he was the baby.
Yeah.
Um, Before that, I was the baby. So yeah, so I lived a lot of different places, and you know, I I I'm not from Idaho, but my parents are both from Idaho, and we used to come here. My aunt and uncle had a cabin in Loman. Now my cousin has it. And we would go there, and so I always had fond memories of Idaho. And when I got a divorce in 1982, I came here to stay with my cousin, and I made more friends the summer that I stayed with her than I had the 15 years I'd lived in Seattle. So I just packed up my stuff, and here I am.
Well, we're all thankful for that.
No,
That's
I'm
good.
thankful too. Thank you.
Let's see. Has independent film influenced mainstream Hollywood films? If so, and why or how?
That's a hard question, but I appreciate that. I think that a lot of filmmakers that start out, you know, doing those independent films and are successful, they shape um, the trajectory of Hollywood. I think. I mean, Steven Spielberg continues to make thoughtful films, and you don't see car crashes in his. They're more story oriented. I'm sure he's had an impact. People see his success and think, oh, gee, I could, still focus on character and story and, make a successful, financially viable film. So I do think that it's all interconnected. I read someplace not too long ago that 99% of filmmakers don't ever make a living at it. And I thought, that's really sad. I think it might be a little bit different in other countries. I think that they aren't as focused on big budgets, and you know, I can see why a studio wouldn't want to take a risk if they're spending millions and millions of dollars. But if you have a company in a foreign country that wants to make films, they don't go to that expense, and so I think they could take a little bit more risk.
Mhm. Okay, let's see what else. Oh, this is a little compliment. Before we moved to Garden City, we lived in Idaho Falls. Whenever we came to Boise for anything, the first thing we would do is see what was playing at the flicks. Thank you for being here. Tell us what we can do to help you stay open.
Oh, that's so nice. And it's almost like a setup. It's like I planted a shill in there somewhere. um, Not really. Um, Here's the thing. We reopened June 26th after being closed for more than 3 months. Um, and I just did an interview with Gene Huff at the Idaho Press, who, and I really sincerely mean this. We haven't laid any employees off. If we succeed, we will succeed together. And if we fail, we're all going to go down with the ship. Um, we hope that people will come back to the movies. We feel like we've done so many things to make it safe. My friend Margie, who came here today to kind of listen to what I was going to talk about, she and her husband go every Friday. We put in the phenomenal air system. It's been shown to filter out 94% of viruses, bacteria, allergens, fungi, smoke. When it was smoky, my husband said, let's go down to the flick so we can breathe. And so we did that, where we put plexiglass in the bathrooms and at the counter. We have a seating chart now. We bought little numbers and we numbered all of our seats, even though they weren't numbered before. And you choose where you're going to sit. You can sit, we had promised 6 feet away because we blocked off rows and seats, but really you can sit 20 feet away from another person. Everyone's wearing a mask. If you buy food or drinks, you can take it off while you have those items in the theater, and then you can put it back on afterwards. We clean the seats that people have chosen between each show. I just feel like, and we have installed all these hand sanitizers all around the premises. So we've done a lot of things. If you don't want to help us by going back to the movies, we're doing curbside DVD rentals and food and concessions. You can get 2 DVDs and popcorn if you want, and take it home and watch Netflix or whatever you're doing these days instead of going to the movies. You can buy gift cards and gift certificates for future use. But I had a couple people ask if they could donate, and we're not a nonprofit, so we don't really take donations. But if you do come, you can tip the staff. They appreciate that a lot. And we've been having dining on the patio. The weather's changing, but I'm ordering heaters, so I'm hoping that will buy us a little bit more time for you to eat outside. So, we hope that you'll come back. And, there are times that it's not been busy. I hate to tell you, because I don't want to say, please come to my party. No one's coming, because everyone wants to go to a party where everyone's going to be there, but everyone's not there, and you can come, and we wish you would.
Indeed. Here's a question from another viewer. Did the flicks ever show Mount Lawrence by Chandler Wild?
Nope. Sorry.
Nope. Oh,
nope. I haven't even heard of that, but don't know everything.
Okay. Let's see. Blah blah blah. Okay, here we go. There are a number of films that I watch every year that I've seen dozens of times in my life. Which films are your favorites? Do you rewatch them? And what makes your favorite films favorites? Big
Fun
questions.
So there are movies that I have seen a lot of times. If they're on TV and I'm flipping around the channel, because I already know the story, I don't have to see the beginning. Casablanca is one of those. I think that's we actually played that for our grand opening. We played that in a foreign film called The Return of Martin Guerre in 1984. But that's a movie I could watch again. I would watch Maltese Falcon again. When Harry Met Sally, I could always watch that again. I love that movie, so fun. Four Weddings and a Funeral, I would watch again. I just lately watched again Love Actually, which we played at, I don't know how much time we have here.
Oh,
I can tell a quick story. So when we were playing Love Actually, it was full. We went on a Friday night, my husband and I, opening night, and we saw 4 teenagers came in behind us. We all sat down, and my daughter and I don't know if he was her husband or her fiance then, but they came with us. They were here for the holiday. And when the lights went down after the trailers, I heard this pop fizz sound of beer cans being opened. And of course, they don't know who I am, right? I turned around, and I just went, whoop, and I grabbed the beers, and I walked out, and I threw them in the trash, and I came right back, and I sat down, and not a word was said. No one complained. And that was that. If you're a teenager, you can't drink at the flicks. I'm sorry. Even if you bring your own, especially if you bring your own. So anyway, so that's a movie that I would watch again. Let's see. I have to tell you a couple more. I actually did make a list. So this is a really old movie that I love, and it's Hitchcock, Rebecca. And now I see they've just remade that. I think it might be on TV or something. I'm not sure if it's going to be in the theaters, but it's from a Daphne du Maurier novel. Very intriguing, dark, but I mean, I think it's Joan Fontaine. No, not Laurence Olivier. Yeah, maybe. Anyway, Rebecca. I love that movie. Let's see. The Graduate. The King's Speech is one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
I saw that at Telluride. My friend Kathy Brack came with me to the Telluride Film Festival, and we were just blown away. Such a good movie. A movie we just played. I really love this movie. It's called Summerland, and I don't think it's out on DVD yet, but if it is, I would watch that again. I thought it was really great. Whale Rider, Nikki Caro, a New Zealand filmmaker. I really loved that movie. High Fidelity with John Cusack. That's from a Nick Hornsby novel, and I've read all his books. I'm a big reader as well as film goer, so it's a great story. And because you know, I sort of identify with that character. I really love jazz, and he was so judgmental about people's taste in music, and I battle that. I do. So I I like that movie a lot. Um, I would not. I would watch Nashville again. I haven't, but I would. I thought it was so multi-layered, and um, you know, that song, the Keith Carradine song, "I'm Easy." I'm not, but uh, but you know, he just lets us almost everybody in the cast. And there's a great Gwen Wells scene, and she died maybe 10 years ago, but um, she wanted to be a singer, and she went to this, like, she was hired to be at this men's club where she thought she was going to sing, and they kept yelling at her to take it off. And you know, her boyfriend, played by an African American, I forget his name, but you know, she goes home, and like the Ned Beatty character says, "Man, she really can't sing a lick." I remember that. And then she goes home to her boyfriend, and he goes, "How did it go? How did you do?" And she said, "Oh, Wade, I had to do me a strip tease."
I hate that.
I know, so sad, but just she was just so cute. So anyway, I love that movie, Nashville. I think it's really great. Dr. Zhivago, I saw that. I think my 16th birthday, I got to go on a date to see Dr. Zhivago. Julie Christie, Far from the Maddie Crowd. They remade that not too long ago with Carey Mulligan, but and it's really good too. But Far from the Maddie Crowd from the Thomas Hardy novel really had a big impact on me. I thought it was really good. Alan Bates, Terrence Stamp, who used to live in Sun Valley, I think.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I think remakes are kind of hard, don't you think? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know why they do that. I wish they wouldn't. You know, a lot of American film companies a lot of times remake a great European film, and I just think, you know, don't just quit it. You know?
Oh, let's see what else we have. Oh, let's see. Ooh. Oh, let's see. Okay. I remember years ago when A River Runs Through It was at the Flicks for weeks and weeks, and so many of the moviegoers had never been to the Flicks until the movie. Now, of course, many of the movies up for the Oscars have run at the Flicks. Was A River Runs Through It sort of a turning point for the Flicks in terms of gaining a more of a mainstream audience?
You know, I promised my friend Holly I would tell that story, and I forgot. I'm so glad somebody else asked that question. So we were open for 7 years. We shoveled money into the Flicks like coal into a furnace, kind of like now. Um, and Dave Garrels, who worked at Columbia Studios, happened to be in town. I had begged for that movie over and over again. My husband and I went to a fundraiser for Cecil Andrus, and Robert Redford was the keynote speaker. It was at the Morrison Center. And afterwards, I realized as he left to roaring applause that he wasn't going to stick around for questions. So I ran out the back door at the Morrison Center and followed him to his car. I'm like, Robert Redford, please let me play your movie. And he said, you have to talk to Columbia about that. So, and I had already been calling Columbia, but then the next time I talked to Columbia, I said, Robert Redford said I should call you. So, and I got to shake Robert Altman's hand. And let me just say, I kind of always notice people's hands when I shake their hands. He feels like a ranch hand, which was kind of cool, I thought. Anyway, so Dave Garrels, who was the head salesperson at Columbia, happened to come to Boise. He was visiting movie theaters. He was at my door at the Flicks. We were closed. I didn't know who he was. I invited him in and we visited, and then he told me who he was. And I said, oh, I really want to play A River Runs Through It. And I asked Robert Redford, and he said to talk to you. And he said, you know, I will let you play that if you play it on both of your screens. And we only had 2 screens at that time, and I agreed to do that. And we did the opening night as a fundraiser for Trout Unlimited. My husband is a very avid fly fisherman, and our friend Doug McClelland at that time was the president of the National Trout Unlimited. So we did a fundraiser. They came to town from Missoula. And we had a line around the block, and we turned people away, and it was so exciting. And people would say, when did this place open? I'm like, 7 years ago, you know. But that Monday, I took the deposit to the bank and they wanted to see my ID. And I'm like, I thought you only had to show ID to take money out of the bank. And they said, when you bring this much money, you have to show ID to put it in. And that was the end of being in the red. Like seriously, and people came back and, and it's such a great movie. We played that again for our 25th anniversary, was it?
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, and then I had people raise their hand if they'd been at the when we showed it the first time, and it was like half the theater. It was pretty great, like to have those same customers all these years. I was just so gratifying.
Oh, I love that. I get goosebumps. That's so fantastic.
Thank
And you
you.
have, don't you have 4 screens now?
We do. We added theater 3 and 4 in 1997.
Yeah.
So
I,
we had one screen for 4 years, and believe it or not, even though we were losing money, we added the other screen because we realized that we couldn't. A lot of movies didn't want to share, and we wanted people to come every week. So they're not going to come to the same movie every week. So that's why we did that.
that's great. Robert Redford said,
I tell you, one time I also got to shake Jimmy Stewart's hand, and his hand felt like an autumn leaf, very light,
"Hmm,
dry. Anyway, he was cool.
that's nice. Let's see. Here we go. Hmm, did your interest in foreign films grow when you grew up in other countries?
No, we I don't think we went to any movies when I was there when I was 4, 5, and 6. I don't remember going to movies. Even though we lived in the town, we did make friends with some of the German people, but um, that's where I first went to church. So that was kind of cool, big dark cathedral. Um, no, I didn't see a foreign movie until I went to see A Man and a Woman in 1966 or 67.
Great.
But it's possible that being in those in other countries sort of fueled my interest in those cultures. I mean, that's certainly true because we did travel around Europe a lot, and we did France and Holland and Italy, lots of different places.
Let's see. I love that A River Runs Through It story. That's so great.
Thanks.
And the Dennis Hopper story. That is really great.
I hope I didn't hurt anyone's eardrums.
Oh my gosh. Let's see. We have a lot of questions.
Okay, I'll try to be shorter with my answers so we
You're
can get to
good.
more
This is
people.
so, I love it. Let's see. What book that hasn't been adapted for the screen would you most like to see made into a film?
I
Uh,
love it when people ask this question.
I
So
know.
I have the book right up at the top shelf of my books. It's called Time and Again, and I begged Mike Hoffman to do it, but he said it would maybe be too expensive. It's a really good book, and it's about um, a guy who is recruited for an experiment where they're experimenting with time and time travel, but not with a machine. The theory is that all time exists all the time, like a river, and just where you happen to be on the bank of the river is your time. So you could go back, you know, on the river or forward on the river and go forward or backward in time, sort of that concept. And so it's set in the beginning of it is set in the Dakota apartments where John Lennon lived, but before John Lennon lived there. He's looking out at Central Park and he has to think of himself being in the 1890s. It's like the 1960s or so. He has to think of himself as being in the 1890s. And you look out and there's horse-drawn carriages and the gaslit lamps, and it could be New York, it could be Central Park today on the right day. But then he goes out into the evening and it's 1890, and then things happen from there. And I just think I love time travel, and there have been a few pretty good time travel movies. That one with Christopher Reeve, the name of the movie is escaping me, but I just think this would be a really good movie, and I wish somebody would make it.
Uh, that would be good. It sounds really interesting. Let's see. There's a lot of compliments to you and what you've done for Boise and the films around town, and we are very thankful that you're here.
Thank you.
Let's see, what else do we have? Um, Oh, let's see. What is this one? Any recent current films to recommend? Great series of films that you have talked about, funny anecdotes about blow up. I love the sound of wind in the trees when the photographer is in the park. Do you know what he's talking about? And how
Oh
amazing.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. When they're playing tennis, I think.
Yeah. Um, let's see. My dinner
Pretend tennis.
My Dinner with Andre, another wonderful film and reflection. Dennis Hopper, funny. Remember Hopper in Paris, Texas? A couple of my recent favorites, Tony Erdman and 2 Days, One Night. Did you see that?
We played Tony Erdman, and I didn't go. Um, I was having a little vertigo then, so sometimes I have to miss things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Does your
but
husband help pick films, or do you pick all the films, or?
my main job is picking the films and writing the blurbs for the calendar, and then confirming the films, and then deciding what stays and what goes. Um, Rick has another job. He's also a really avid film goer. We always go to film festivals together, and he loves to do that as much as I do. Um, but I certainly bounce things off of him. And sometimes he reads a review and says, "What about this movie?" I'm like, "Honey, it's already in the calendar." But he has great taste too. And, we enjoy the same kind of movies, which is, a great thing for marriage if you enjoy the same thing.
Right. Let's see. I got another. I thought somebody raised their hand. Ooh, sorry.
Yeah, it looks like there's like 23 on the Q&As here.
I know. I'm trying to sift through them.
That's fine. Don't worry.
I
Oh,
do.
while you're looking, let me just say this, because the
Okay.
beginning of that last question that turned into kind of a compliment was any recent films to recommend.
Yes.
And I just saw on Saturday On the Rocks with Bill Murray, and I really, really loved it. I thought it was really great. It's a Sofia Coppola movie. She's an independent filmmaker. I know she has means because her dad is Francis Ford Coppola, but she's the one that made Lost in Translation, which was a great film that we played. And On the Rocks is really, really good. I would strongly recommend that.
Yeah, that looked really good.
Yeah, and we have some things coming up that I think are going to be really, really good too. I mean, Nomadland just won the big prize at Venice Film Festival. Frances McDormand. And it's Chloe Zhao who made The Rider, which was a recent good film that we played that you could rent. You can look at our film rentals on our website, and you can see a lot of these, movies that have played recently that you might have missed. And some movies did go straight to DVD instead of being played. So, you know, that's a good thing. And one thing I should say really quick, we're also people who want to help us. We're streaming movies, and we actually implemented a streaming page on our website, and half of the money goes to the flick. So if any of those look good, there's one that we need to watch called Jimmy Carter, Rock and Roll President, which I'm pretty excited about. So yeah, you could stream movies, and it's like $10 to $12, but we get half the money. So, and our tickets are only $9.50 for general admission, but the other theaters have been 11 and a quarter, I think. So if you're spending 12 and we're getting half, that's not that bad for you, and it's really good for us.
Well, I know I do have a question for a friend of mine that is interested in maybe renting a theater. Is that a possibility? Or
We've had lots of requests for that lately, and I don't like to cancel our regular movies for you to have a different movie, because the people that are coming, I want to provide that service for them. But we have a couple people coming up that are going to bring a group to a movie that we're playing, but we're going to give them a discount because it's like their birthday, and they're going to bring 20 people. But they're going to come to a movie that we're already showing, and they're allowing us, they're saying, we don't care if other people are there. It's not like we're going to get naked, so fine.
But you do like special events for nonprofits, don't you? Or...
We do. And we did one for the Wasson Center just recently. And it was a really good movie, but because of the decreased capacity, I would say they broke even, but they didn't really make money. But partly for them, it's also about awareness as well as
Right.
fundraising. So they were delighted actually to do it. It was a Helen Mirren um, narrated film called uh, something about Anne Frank and other stories, and it was other people who had gone through the same kind of thing that Anne Frank had gone through, hiding during the war.
Right. That's good.
But yeah,
Yeah.
your friend can email us and ask us that question or call us.
Well, I think I know. I think you know who my friend is, but it's like a secret. It's like the train movie. I think this friend has asked you about it before. Renting the train. The what is that? Have you heard of that movie, The Train, where the train is hauling the artwork from Nazi?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, but that's just neither here nor there. Let's see. What is the process for choosing the films that you show? Do you have to go through like a specific process, or buying it or renting it from the?
So I work with lots of different film distributors. We very, very rarely show a film that doesn't have a distributor because we need them to have posters and a trailer,
Oh, yeah.
um, some method of promoting the film so it doesn't just get lost in the shuffle. But I mean, the distributors change, companies come and go, but I have dealt with hundreds of companies over the years and they email me and say, I'll send you a screener, and it used to be they have to physically mail me a DVD, and now they just send me a Vimeo link and I can watch the movie on my computer. Film festivals, I always find films that I'm dying to play at film festivals. One time, one of the first Telluride film festivals I went to, they played this movie called Mother Teresa, and they weren't going to try to do it theatrically. And the guy sitting next to me, he was a stranger, but now he's a friend all these years later. I talked him into buying the rights for the film, and we played it. Mother Teresa, it's a great movie. So, some distributors have 5 movies and some have, 100 movies. So it varies a lot. But I just do a lot of research. I'm kind of down the rabbit hole a lot of times on the computer looking up movies, and it's fun. I enjoy it.
That's great. That is a great job. You have a great job.
I have a great job.
And you have a great staff. They're always
Oh, yeah.
they've been there
Yeah.
forever, and they're great people.
Yeah. I can't tell you how lucky I am. It took me a little while to get the hang of this. People that wouldn't stay late and have a party and drink all my beer. So, but I'm so blessed to have the people that I have working for me. And, Josie's been there more than 25 years. Lynette's been there 24 years, I think. Brent's been there 15. I mean, like, people, the average lifespan of an employee, not lifespan, but work span of people that work at movie theaters is 6 months nationwide. And for me, it's like, 18 years, whatever. It's just, I'm really, really a lucky person.
Yeah. I do have one last comment, probably before we sign off for the evening, but it's from someone that obviously probably knows you. It says, "Where do you get your sense of humor and wit from? You are the funniest, witty person I know."
Well, that's really sweet. I don't know. My family accuses me of being born with the happy gene. And my little granddaughter, who's 16 months old, I think has it too, which is pretty lucky, as well as my chin. I'm sorry about that. But, I just like to have fun. I like to make fun of myself, and I like to have a good time. And it's just in the genes. My 3 siblings are, always said that mother loved me best. And she said I was a hell of a lot more pleasant to be around than they were. But but the truth is that my sister is actually also hilarious, and brothers not so much.
I get that. I can only say that because I have 2 brothers and they're not very much fun.
Well,
Anyway,
we have the girl thing going, I guess, but we do know how to enjoy ourselves.
yes. But we really appreciate you joining us tonight. I hope everybody had a good time.
I hope so
tried to
too.
get to everybody's questions.
Let me just say this: if people had a question and I didn't get to it because I'm too blabby, You can email me. It's just Carol with an E on the end at theflixboise.com. I'm perfectly happy to answer your questions. It's fun for me to talk about this stuff. I probably didn't even get to all the stories I was going to tell, but I thought an hour was going to be too long, but here we are. It's over.
You have great stories. We really appreciate you. And thank you so much for bringing more culture to our valley and Idaho. And I know we have board members that come to town for our meetings, and they go to the flicks after our meetings, and they just
That's
they
great.
love your theater. And
Well, my husband had the idea for this. It wasn't my idea, but we did it because it's what we wanted. We wanted to have something good to eat and a good movie to go to and a glass of wine with it. So, if it's not there, you have to do it yourself. And if you build it, they will come.
that's true. Thank you so much, Carol. And we
Thank you.
appreciate you. And thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. Hope you'll do another conversation again with us next time. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Bye.